and just for yours, I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Regional Operations, if that helps. What I'll do is I'll just make a couple of quick opening statements, and then I'm happy to take questions after that, if that's all right. I didn't think there'd be so many of you working today. It's worse than us. Huh? Absolutely.
I think most of us just rolled in from downstairs.
So you've worked all night? Yeah, sure. Okay. Well, good afternoon. Oh, sorry, are we right at the back?
Yes, we are.
You guys okay? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. And Happy New Year to all of you, and Happy New Year to all of Queensland. As I said, I intend to give you a quick wrap-up of the overnight issues, and then I'm happy to talk about any of the issues, including the road toll, that you might be interested in. Overnight in Queensland, we had a fairly quiet night. The one matter that is concerning us at the moment is a death at Gingin that we are treating as suspicious at this stage. It's early days in that investigation, and we'll update you throughout the day as those investigations take place. But overall, in Queensland, we know that people enjoyed themselves. They were out in numbers, but certainly here in Brisbane, it seemed quieter for our police during the night, and numbers were certainly down even at the South Bank area. Whilst I can't give you exact numbers, certainly our experienced officers and the security staff from South Bank have agreed that numbers were down there, and that flow-on effect was that numbers were down generally in the entertainment precincts around the Brisbane area. The Gold Coast saw lots of families out and about earlier in the night, certainly about 20,000 people in a number of their parks in the northern part of the Gold Coast. But again, the crowds were very well behaved. We had large numbers of police out and about, both in Brisbane and right across Queensland, and we were very happy with the overall conduct and behaviour of all the crowds. Moving on to our road stats, you might be aware that as of midnight last night, the road toll for 2011 stood at 269, which was 20 more fatalities than in the previous year. Whilst that stat in itself is disturbing, we must remember that that figure is still 52 fatalities less than the average of the previous 5 years of road fatalities in Queensland. The rate of fatalities for last year, meaning 2011, ended up being 5.87 fatalities per 100,000. That compares with 5.53 the year before. But those two rates are the two lowest rates since accurate records were started in 1952. So in many respects, 2011 was a year where people really did drive safely, although we still had the tragedies of the 269 deaths. A couple of other things about the road fatalities last year. We had more multiple fatalities last year than the year before, quite considerably more than that. There were 31 crashes that resulted in more than one death during 2011, whereas the previous year there were only 12 traffic crashes that resulted in multiple deaths. We certainly are aware that with the fatal four, we saw that speed was slightly down as a contributing factor in 2011 as opposed to 2010, going from 22% down to 18% in 2011. Alcohol again was slightly down as a contributing factor in 2011, from 20% in 10 down to 16% in 2011. Seatbelts were about on par, about 13% of the traffic crashes involved seatbelts, and certainly for fatigue, there was a slight rise in the causal rate in 2011, going from 12% in 2010 up to 14% in 2011. The other slight increase was in pedestrian fatalities. We went from 11% up to 12% as a causal factor in 2011. So that's the base information. I'm happy to take any of your questions that you'd like to pose.
Just
serious injuries. Do you have figures on those?
We do, and in fact, to my memory, the serious injury accidents is actually down, and I'm just looking for my figures on that. I'm sorry, and I do have those, but it is down. And in fact, serious traffic crashes or serious injury traffic crashes, we always believe are a better indicator of the driving conduct of across the whole of the state. So the fact that we've had a reduction, we see that as a very good outcome for Queensland. It means less people being taken to hospital because of serious road accidents. And I'll give you those statistics after the conduct of this interview today.
When you say it's down on 2018?
Yes.
For New Year's Eve, how many extra police and services did you have on last night?
As I said, we had a large number. I haven't got the figures to quote to you on exact numbers, but you might also understand that it was a Saturday night, and that meant that our drink safe precincts were also in action. So it meant that there was significantly more police on the streets right across Queensland, but certainly in the 3 drink safe precincts of Townsville, here in the Fortitude Valley, and of course at the Gold Coast.
You said before it was a relatively uneventful night. Do you believe that's because of that police presence, or simply obviously it was pretty gloomy weather earlier in the day, so that kept crowds away?
I think it's a combination of all of those variables. Certainly, as I said to you, the numbers seem to be down, particularly earlier in the night. I was in South Bank myself in the early part of the evening at the first fireworks time, and even in my own experience, the numbers certainly were a lot less than we've seen previously. And partly I think that's partly due to the fact that South Bank is now an alcohol-free precinct for these events. And there were many, many family groups there enjoying the evening and enjoying it very peacefully and having a good time. And I think it's a great strategy that's been put in place over there.
So was public drinking a problem last night or not?
Look, the figures aren't showing that. Certainly, police were onto those sorts of things very early in the night with the tip-out laws that we have. I know anecdotally from down at Fortitude Valley, where I was in later in the night, that our police had got in early and had spoken to a range of people requiring them to tip out alcohol that they had in their hands in the street.
So you don't have any arrest numbers at all?
Certainly not. No, it's not one that we keep normally across the state. The Gold Coast certainly has figures, and when I say the Gold Coast, the whole of southeastern region, but that's simply because that is their normal processes. The drink safe precinct figures will come in probably over the next day or two, so we'll have that for Townsville, the Valley, and for the Gold Coast generally, but the rest of the state is not one that we keep figures on.
You said it was quieter for police. There were a couple of incidents where police were attacked and bitten.
There was one incident that occurred fairly early in the night. It was about 7:45 in the City Mall. A police officer was bitten by a female who was taken into custody straight away. I actually was able to follow up on that personally last night. The police officer's fine.
So there's no concern for attacks on police last night?
No, it was it was a reasonable night. I mean, obviously, certainly there were other matters where officers were spat at, which is always deplorable. But our officers moved through, took the people into custody, and they'll be dealt with through the courts.
In terms of general crowd behaviour then, how does this year compare with previous years?
Look, I think just anecdotally, I think this was a very good year. I think it was quiet. Certainly you can't really compare it to last year, but certainly in years previous to that, it was a quieter year for Queensland Police, and it was a quieter year, I think, generally for the public.
You seem somewhat relieved that this year was so docile compared to previous years.
I think we're always pleased when the behaviour of the general public is such that everyone can go out, enjoy themselves and do it peacefully and not get into strife and not cause other people grief.
Another test, I guess, for the police chopper on the Gold Coast last night. Did that prove successful?
Certainly the chopper was involved last night. The chopper has been helping in a range of events and incidents down there. I don't know whether you're aware, but in the last week it was involved in identifying and being able to help police take into custody a speeding hoon who was ultimately charged with unlicensed driving as well. So, I mean, in those sorts of ways, having a chopper is certainly a great help.
With the suspicious death of Jin Jin, I've heard reports that the man suffered severe head injuries. Can you comment on that?
No, I'm not prepared to comment any further on the Jin Jin matter until we've really looked into that. It's one that will take some time to sort through.
You said that they'd be updated during the day. Do you expect it to develop today?
I expect that by the end of today we may have something, yes. But obviously if it comes out, we'll let you know.
Can I just clarify, was this the first New Year's Eve that South Bank was alcohol-free?
I can't, sorry, it's not the first evening that it's been alcohol-free. You might be aware that it's been alcohol-free during the year. But in terms of New Year's Eve, it may well be.
I'm just trying to check.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I can't answer it directly. But I can certainly find out for you and let you know.
Thank you.
In terms of, you said police around South East Queensland, Brisbane area were quite happy with behaviour. What about regional Queensland?
Certainly, no, I've been in touch with all of the regions this morning, and whilst there has been a number of incidents, both here in the southeast and throughout the state, as I said, probably the most serious is the death of the gentleman near Jin Jin, but there were other incidents, including stabbings, that we've had, but generally overall, it's been seen as a reasonably quiet New Year's Eve.
You said there were lots of police out. How does that compare to last year? Would you say there were more on the day?
As I said, last year's probably not a good year to compare with, but certainly the drink safe precinct areas, we had extra police out for that. But generally on New Year's Eve, our operations mean that there are large numbers of police out in force right across the state.
Got a question about the Operation Performance Review for October, particularly in Logan and the definitions of gangs there. And we've seen some violent incidents recently, and basically what you have is the real street gangs operating in the district. And I don't know if you can answer this, but you've said there's 45 people residing in Logan District that are involved in gangs, but that there's no actual gangs operating in the area. I was wondering if that would, whether you would be looking at changing your definition of a gang for that area, because there's gangs you've said there's gangs in Ipswich and Brisbane area, there's 13, there's a couple in Ipswich as well. And I just wanted to chase up basically whether you'd be looking at that, the definition of gang in the area.
No, we've settled on a definition of gangs. I can get that definition for you. It's following a European definition. We realised probably a couple of years ago when we started the gang project here in Queensland that perception is everything in this. I mean, a couple of kids kicking a can down the street to a person inside a house at midnight, they might think that that's a gang. So we were very careful to make sure that perception was included in our overall consideration of what a gang is. As you well know, gangs in this state range from the very high end, outlaw motorcycle gangs, and that's the area that we consider are most involved in a formal type of group that actually gets involved in illegal activities, right down to the other end of the continuum, which is a loose-knit group of young people who simply band together and may commit some unlawful act. Now, in between there is a whole range of things. Certainly, I don't know the figures you're quoting from the OPR, but I will say this, that there are no doubt gangs right across Queensland. Whether they're gangs that are sustainable, meaning that they stay formed for a long period of time, or whether they only relate to people who, for the moment, come together as a group to do some unlawful act. They exist everywhere. So certainly we said a long time ago we weren't going to get certainly bogged down in the definitional term of what a gang is. If the perception of the public is that there's gangs operating there probably are, and we accept that.
That's it. I mean, it just looks kind of odd on paper when you say there's no gangs operating in the Logan area, and you do see there's occasional instances of people together.
No, and as I said, I don't know which stats you're actually quoting from.
Yep.
It may have been that at a particular time there weren't any recognised gangs there, meaning gangs that we hadn't actually said were operating right at that moment. But that's the only obvious explanation I can give to you.
So you stick by the basic definition that you're using?
Yeah, absolutely, because it is a good definition and it gives an understanding to people that there is this continuum. But as we've always said, we're not going to get bogged down in the definition. Our key issue is gangs are about people coming together, and ultimately what we don't want them to do is to be involved in unlawful activities. And we're attacking that through our intelligence base and our recording systems. Certainly we've seen in other places around, not so much in Australia, but certainly overseas, where gangs have become a problem very, very quickly. The processes that we've put in place help us to make sure that we don't suffer that same fate, that if we are starting to see a trend, we will know it through our recording and our intelligence processes.
Okay, so even if they're not yet formally defined as such, you still keep track of them?
Absolutely, we do. Anyone who's looking at, our people, we request our people to do street checks, and one of the areas of street checks we specifically ask them to relate to is who's accompanying them, who are their companions, who are their friends, who are their associates. Are they themselves associating as a gang? And we ask those questions. Thank you. Okay, we done? That was pretty...
Just a bit of another question, actually. The two incidents that I do have for last night were both involve teenage girls and young ladies and stuff like that. We've been kind of running some stuff about, drinking and girls and the kind of alcohol that they drink and whether it incites, trouble, violence in the community, that kind of thing. And I don't know, are you noticing that not just around New Year's, but in those celebratory atmospheres, the cheap drinks?
That's a really difficult one to ask. To try and answer without reference to specific statistics. And the type of statistics you'd be looking for are in drink-safe precincts or around entertainment areas. Are we seeing an increasing trend in offending by females? And I'm sorry, I just don't have those stats at my...
Anything anecdotal by here?
No, well, it's one that I'd rather give you proper information through statistical analysis.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I hope it's a quiet day for the rest of you.